The city lights shimmered through the glass windows of the rooftop lounge as I adjusted my jacket. I gripped the velvet box in my pocket, feeling the weight of the silver wristwatch inside. It was our 6th wedding anniversary, and I had come straight from the trading floor to celebrate with my wife, Chloe Sterling. As I walked into the private dining suite, the sound of laughing voices and clinking champagne flutes filled the air. I stopped in my tracks. A large banner hung across the back wall, celebrating a corporate merger, and standing at the center of the room was Chloe, laughing beside a tall man in a tailored suit. It was Julian Croft, her wealthy ex-fiancé who had left for Europe years ago. "Ethan?" Chloe turned, her smile instantly fading into a cold glare. "What are you doing here so early?" "I thought we had dinner reservations for 8, Chloe," I said, looking from her to Julian. "It's our anniversary." "Oh, right," Chloe replied, waving her hand dismissively. "Plans changed, Ethan. This is a private celebration for the senior board members." "I see," I said, my heart sinking. "And what is Julian doing here?" Julian stepped forward, flashing an arrogant, condescending smile as he adjusted his cufflinks. "I'm back for good, Ethan. Chloe and I have been discussing the future of Sterling Capital for weeks." "Future of the firm?" I looked back at Chloe, confusion and betrayal tightening in my chest. "Chloe, what is he talking about?" Chloe tapped her champagne glass with a silver spoon, clearing her throat to gather the attention of the surrounding board members. "Everyone, please quiet down. I have an important corporate announcement to make tonight." The room grew still as the board members turned toward us. "As CEO of Sterling Capital, my primary duty is positioning this firm for our upcoming initial public offering," Chloe declared, her voice ringing out clearly. "To achieve true market expansion, we need aggressive, high-profile leadership. That is why I am officially appointing Julian Croft as our new Chief Investment Officer, effective immediately." Gasping echoed through the room. I stood frozen, staring at my wife in utter disbelief. "Chloe, you can't be serious," I whispered, stepping closer to her. "I built our quantitative trading department from scratch. I manage the high-frequency algorithms that keep this entire firm profitable." "You're too timid, Ethan," Chloe snapped, leaning in so only I could hear, though her words cut like a blade. "You lack the prestige and aggressive vision required to take us public. You're content sitting in a back office, while Julian knows how to command high-society investors. I gave 6 years of my life to building your family's firm," I said, my voice shaking with restrained emotion. "Is this how you treat me on our anniversary?" "Business is business, Ethan," she said coldly, turning her back on me to face the board again. "Don't throw a temper tantrum in front of our stakeholders. You can stay on as a junior strategist if you wish, but Julian is taking the lead." Julian stepped up beside Chloe, placing a hand casually on the small of her back. He looked at me with a smirk and raised his glass. "Thanks for warming the Chief Investment Officer seat for me, Ethan. I'll take it from here." Silence fell over the room as everyone waited for my reaction. My chest burned with heartbreak, but I refused to give them the satisfaction of a scene. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the velvet box containing the anniversary watch, and set it silently on the edge of the glass table. "Happy anniversary, Chloe," I said softly. Without waiting for another word, I turned on my heel and walked straight out of the rooftop lounge. The cold night air hit my face as I stepped out into the pouring rain. Water soaked through my suit, but I barely felt the chill. I looked back up at the glowing rooftop lights one last time. Chloe and Julian were celebrating inside, completely oblivious to the fatal mistake they had just made. They thought Julian was taking control of the firm's fortune, completely unaware that 90% of Sterling Capital's core trading volume and master institutional accounts didn't belong to the firm at all. They belonged legally, exclusively, to me. The silence of my empty apartment pressed heavily against my chest as I stumbled inside, tossing my jacket onto the counter. I collapsed onto the couch, staring blankly at the ceiling while Chloe's harsh laughter echoed endlessly through my mind. 6 years of dedicated marriage traded away in a single evening for Julian Croft's empty promises. A hard, rapid knock on the front door shattered the quiet. "Ethan, open the door," my brother Mac called out from the hallway. I saw the press release Sterling Capital just blasted to the news networks. Open up. I stood up slowly and unlocked the heavy deadbolt. Mac burst inside, his dark suit disheveled and a thick leather briefcase clutched tightly in his hand. He looked at my pale, hollow face and let out a furious breath. "It's true, isn't it?" Mac asked, setting his briefcase down on the coffee table with a loud thud. "Chloe actually handed your chief investment officer seat to Julian in front of the entire board. She said I was too timid to take the firm public." I replied, my voice raspy and devoid of emotion as I sat back down. "She said Julian had the high society status she needed. She didn't even care that today was our 6th anniversary. She is an ungrateful, foolish woman," Max said sharply, popping open the brass latches of his briefcase and pulling out a stack of blue-bound legal folders. "I brought your original founder agreements and personal license filings from my office vault. We need to review your portfolio mandates immediately." "I don't have the energy to look at financial contracts tonight, Mac," I muttered, shaking my head in exhaustion. "My chest feels completely hollow." "You need to wake up, Ethan," Mac insisted, sitting beside me and spreading the papers across the table. "Listen to me. Chloe might be the CEO of the public entity, Sterling Capital, but do you remember how we structured your quantitative trading desk 3 years ago?" I frowned, forcing my mind through the fog of betrayal. "I signed a management oversight agreement." "Exactly. A temporary management agreement," Max shouted triumphantly, pointing his finger at a highlighted clause on the 3rd page. "I made sure your high-frequency trading algorithms and your top 3 institutional client mandates were legally tethered to your personal master broker ID, not the firm itself. Chloe controls the corporate brand, but you personally own the engine that generates 90% of their trading volume." "Wait," I stammered, looking up as the legal reality began to register. "You're telling me I still hold the master routing keys?" "You hold every single key, Ethan," Max smirked, eyes gleaming with sharp determination. "You have the full legal right to revoke those algorithms and transfer those institutional accounts to your own independent firm whenever you choose. If you pull your access keys, Sterling Capital will be left with 0 core capital by tomorrow morning." I stared at the highlighted clauses, my heart pounding rapidly. The urge to immediately crush Chloe's arrogance fought against the lingering pain of my love for her. "I need to talk to Mom before I do anything," I whispered, reaching for my phone on the table. "I need grounding." I dialed the familiar home number and placed the call on speaker. After 2 short rings, my mother Eleanor's warm, gentle voice filled the quiet room. "Ethan, dear," she answered softly. "Is everything all right? You sound troubled." "Mom, Chloe replaced me at the firm tonight," I confessed, my voice cracking slightly. "She brought her ex-fiancé Julian back and gave him my position. She told me I was useless to her ambition." A heavy pause lingered on the line before my mother spoke, her tone shifting from soft concern to unshakable strength. "Ethan, listen to your mother carefully," Eleanor said firmly. "Your late father built the Vance name on honor, hard work, and quiet dignity. He always told you that a person who measures your worth by how much they can use you will never truly respect you. I gave her 6 years of my life, Mom," I said, looking at my trembling hands. "And she showed you her true heart tonight, son," Eleanor replied softly. "Do not let her vanity drag you into the mud, and do not stay where your loyalty is treated like a weakness. Step away from her with your head held high, reclaim what your father taught you, and let truth handle the rest." "Thank you, Mom," I breathed out, feeling a profound sense of clarity wash over my mind. "I know what I have to do." I ended the call and looked up at Mac, who was watching me with a confident grin. "Get the asset transfer forms ready, Mac," I said steadily. "Tomorrow morning, we cut their supply line." The morning sun filtered through the high windows of our living room, but the air inside felt icy cold. The front door unlocked, and Chloe stepped inside, followed closely by Julian, who carried 2 expensive leather travel bags. "I see you didn't even bother to leave the house, Ethan," Chloe said, tossing her keys onto the marble console with a sharp clatter. "Still moping around like a victim?" "I am just taking in the reality of 6 years of marriage, Chloe," I replied, sitting quietly at the kitchen counter, keeping my voice entirely flat. There is no reality to take in, Ethan, she sneered, unzipping her closet doors and hurling her designer coats onto the couch. You were an anchor, dragging my ambition into the dirt. Julian has high society vision. You were content sitting in a dim basement office, staring at computer monitors while I built our corporate image. I built the trading algorithms that funded your lifestyle, Chloe, I reminded her softly. Julian stepped forward, resting a hand on Chloe's waist with an arrogant smirk. Let it go, Ethan. You had a good run riding on Chloe's family name, but Sterling Capital needs a real leader now. A man with prestige, not a glorified desk clerk. Julian is taking us public next year, Chloe added, looking at me with cold contempt. You could never give me the status I deserve. Don't call me, don't text me, and don't try to ruin my big day. I slowly reached down, slid my silver wedding ring off my finger, and placed it quietly on the glass counter between us. Take whatever you want and leave, Chloe. Gladly, she snapped, grabbing her bags as Julian opened the door for her. Enjoy your quiet, pathetic life. The door slammed shut, leaving behind total silence. I took a deep, steady breath, feeling an immense weight lift off my chest. An hour later, I met my brother Mac at his private downtown office. Mac had his laptop open, showing the central exchange portal. Is she completely gone? Mac asked, handing me a digital authorization stylus. She walked out with Julian, I said, taking the stylus. She told me I was an anchor holding her back. Then let's cut her supply line, Mac said grimly. I have the transfer protocols ready. As the sole owner of Vance Quantitative Trust, you are executing your legal right to reassign your master institutional accounts. Do it, I said, signing the digital authorization form on the tablet screen. Transfer all 3 primary portfolios directly to Vance Capital. Execution confirmed, Mac declared, tapping the enter key. $400 million in core institutional liquidity has just been officially moved out of Sterling Capital's broker ID. Their main trading balance is now practically zero. How long until the transfer reflects on the central exchange? I asked, looking at the green confirmation screen. It is instant, Mac chuckled, leaning back in his chair. When the opening bell rings tomorrow morning, they won't even have enough capital to cover basic margin requirements. Meanwhile, across town at the Financial News Network studio, Chloe and Julian sat under bright studio spotlights, beaming proudly into the television cameras. We are live with Chloe Sterling, CEO of Sterling Capital, and her newly appointed Chief Investment Officer, Julian Croft, the news anchor announced enthusiastically. Julian, what can investors expect from this massive leadership shift? We are entering an unprecedented era of aggressive growth, Julian announced into the microphone, flashing a confident smile. Our proprietary algorithms and capital pools are positioned to dominate the market starting first thing tomorrow morning. Chloe beamed beside him, clutching his arm in front of millions of viewers, completely oblivious to the fact that the entire foundation of her empire had already vanished into thin air. The red emergency lights on my desk console flashed repeatedly as my phone vibrated across the sleek glass surface. It was 9:15 in the morning, exactly 15 minutes after the opening bell. Ethan, look at the exchange terminal, Mac said, gesturing toward the dual monitors mounted on the office wall. The entire trading floor at Sterling Capital is in absolute chaos. What are the numbers showing? I asked, leaning over the desk as my phone screen lit up with another incoming call from Chloe. Julian tried to trigger his high-frequency arbitrage strategy the moment trading opened, Mac replied, tapping his tablet screen. He assumed your core liquidity pools were built into the firm's local servers. When the execution orders hit the central route, the exchange rejected every single trade. Because the master routing keys belong to my personal license, not Sterling Capital, I said, ignoring Chloe's 7th missed call. Without my algorithms running background balancing, those trades are dead on arrival. Before Mac could respond, my phone began ringing again. This time, I picked it up and hit the speaker button. Ethan, Chloe screamed through the speaker, her voice shrill and laced with furious panic. What on earth did you do to our system routing? Good morning, Chloe, I answered calmly, keeping my voice level. Don't you dare give me a calm attitude, she yelled, background noise of shouting traders echoing through her line. The trading desk is completely frozen. We have $40 million in pending orders trapped in the queue, and the brokers can't execute a single position. That sounds like a major operational problem for your new chief investment officer, I said quietly. Did Julian not verify the liquidity architecture before taking the position? Julian says you deliberately sabotaged our server routing out of spite. Chloe shouted, gasping for breath. He said you changed the master encryption codes before you left last night. You were throwing a childish temper tantrum because I promoted him over you. I didn't sabotage anything, Chloe, I replied, looking directly at Mac as he brought up our legal filings. I simply transferred my personal assets and master keys to my independent account. You replaced me, so I removed my personal property from your firm. Your property? She shrieked. You built those systems while working at Sterling Capital. Everything you created belongs to this company. Check my original founder agreement, Chloe, I stated firmly. My proprietary algorithms were licensed to Sterling Capital under my private master broker ID. The moment you terminated my role as chief investment officer, that license automatically revoked. Ethan, listen to me. Julian's arrogant voice suddenly cut in over the line, taking the phone from Chloe. You are playing a very dangerous game, kid. I just instructed our corporate legal team to file an emergency injunction against you for corporate sabotage and intentional destruction of shareholder value. Save your threats, Julian. Max spoke up, leaning toward the microphone. This is Marcus Vance, Ethan's legal counsel. If you file that injunction, we will immediately produce the Central Exchange Master Registry proving Ethan is the sole legal owner of those algorithms. Who the hell are you? Julian sneered. We will ruin both of you in court. You're destroying a multi-hundred-million-dollar firm over a personal grudge. Mr. Croft, a sharp, authoritative voice interrupted from our end of the line. David Chun stepped into my office, holding an official regulatory folder from the Central Exchange. He leaned toward the speaker phone with a stern expression. This is David Chun, Chief Risk Officer at the Central Exchange, David stated coldly. We have reviewed Mr. Vance's license agreements and asset transfer notices. Ethan Vance acted entirely within his full legal rights. Furthermore, Sterling Capital is currently in violation of minimum capital requirements due to your failed liquidity executions. Silence fell over the line, broken only by Chloe's frantic, ragged breathing. Mr. Chun, Chloe stammered, her voice suddenly losing all its aggression. There must be a mistake. Julian assured us our corporate backup funds were secure. Your backup liquidity was tethered to Ethan Vance's private accounts, Mrs. Sterling, David Chin explained mercilessly. Without his portfolio backing your margin lines, your firm is operating at a severe deficit. I have already notified your primary board members. No, please, Chloe whispered in terror. You can't do that. The market will panic. Board member Victoria Sterling has just issued a summons for an emergency shareholder meeting at 4 o'clock today. David Chin concluded, closing his folder. I suggest you prepare your financial disclosures. Ethan, please, Chloe pleaded, her voice cracking as Julian cursed loudly in the background. Talk to me. Don't let Aunt Victoria destroy everything we built. You destroyed it the moment you traded my loyalty for Julian's lies, I said softly, and hung up the phone. The neon stock ticker across the glass wall flashed red as Sterling Capital's share price plummeted another 12%. I stood in the high-floor conference room of our temporary office, adjusting the cuffs of a charcoal bespoke suit. My brother Mac walked in, holding a leather binder filled with newly stamped regulatory documents. The Central Exchange just cleared the final registration for Vance Capital. Ethan, you are officially open for business. How are the institutional transfers looking? I asked, looking into his eyes with sharp, quiet focus. Better than we projected, Max said, cracking a confident smile. The moment news broke that you pulled your routing keys, 3 major pension funds called us directly. They don't care about Chloe's corporate PR campaigns. They care about returns, and they know your algorithms produced 90% of Sterling Capital's profits. They trusted my track record, not the firm's logo, I said, stepping toward the conference table to sign the final setup charters. When I was sitting in that basement office in my old work sweater, Chloe thought I was just an exchange worker bee. She never understood that institutional trust stays with the strategist, not the executive suit. Well, she's learning that lesson the hard way right now, Max said, opening his tablet to show me the live market feeds. Sterling Capital's short-term margin lines were frozen an hour ago by their prime brokers. Julian is panicking. Did he try to execute his speculative macro trade this morning? I asked, capping my pen. He tried. Mac chuckled darkly. Without your high-frequency liquidity pools backing his positions, his orders hit massive slippage. He lost $12 million in under 40 minutes. The prime brokers freaked out and demanded immediate collateral. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed on the table. The screen displayed Chloe's name. I answered and placed it on speaker. Ethan, Chloe's voice shrieked through the speaker, breathless and trembling with rage. What are you doing to my company? I am running my own business, Chloe, I answered calmly. Just as you decided to run yours with Julian. The brokers locked our credit accounts, she screamed, background noise echoing as if she were pacing wildly in her corner office. Julian said you sabotaged our routing servers. He said you hid the master access keys before you left. Julian is lying to cover his own incompetence, Chloe, I said coldly. Those routing keys were licensed under my personal master broker ID. They were never corporate property. Julian doesn't know how to code, build algorithms, or manage risk. You replaced a quantitative strategist with a fast-talking salesman. That's not true, Chloe yelled, though a flicker of hesitation cracked through her confident tone. Julian has decades of venture capital experience. He was going to lead our IPO. If he's so experienced, ask him why he used your cash reserves to pay off his old offshore trading debts. I replied smoothly. Silence heavy as lead hung on the line for 3 long seconds. What did you just say? Chloe whispered, her voice suddenly dropping into pure shock. Check the debt settlement disclosures filed in his name 2 weeks ago, Chloe. Mac chimed in from across the table. Julian didn't join Sterling Capital to elevate your firm. He joined to use your corporate balance sheet as collateral to save himself from bankruptcy. No, Julian promised me. Chloe stammered, her voice cracking as the terrible reality began to breach her vanity. He told me he had $50 million in private capital waiting to be injected into our fund. He lied to you, Chloe, I said, my voice dropping to a low, firm register. You traded 6 years of my quiet loyalty and real market returns for a polished liar in an expensive suit because you wanted quick social status. Ethan, please, she begged, her composure crumbling into frantic desperation. The emergency shareholder board meeting is in 2 hours. Victoria is calling for a vote of no confidence against me. You have to come to the boardroom and tell them this is all just a technical glitch. We can fix this. I will be at the board meeting, Chloe, I said softly. Thank God, she gasped, letting out a heavy sob of relief. I knew you still cared about me. You won't let them ruin my life's work. I am attending as the primary debt holder and sole owner of your core trading architecture. I corrected her, looking at my reflection in the dark window pane. Have your legal counsel present. Ethan, wait. I disconnected the call before she could finish, sliding the phone smoothly into my suit pocket. Is everything ready for the 6 o'clock session? I asked Mac. David Chun and Victoria Sterling are already waiting in the main lobby downstairs. Mac confirmed, picking up his briefcase with a proud grin. It's time to show them who really built that empire. Let's go, I said, stepping toward the doors with absolute, unshakable purpose. The heavy frosted glass doors of the central boardroom clicked open. I sat quietly behind the dark mahogany table, watching through the smart glass partition as Chloe, Julian, and 4 corporate attorneys walked inside. Julian adjusted his silk tie, attempting to look confident despite the pale sweat glistening on his forehead. Chloe walked beside him in a sharp red suit, her heels clicking aggressively against the marble floor. Let our legal team lead the charge, Chloe, Julian said loudly, his voice echoing in the grand room. Ethan is a quiet guy. The moment we threaten him with a joint breach of contract lawsuit, he will crumble and transfer the trading routing back to us. I know him better than anyone, Julian, Chloe replied, her tone dripping with ice. Ethan hates confrontation. He's throwing a child's temper tantrum because I gave you the chief investment officer seat. Once he sees the liability numbers, he'll hand over the algorithm access codes. He has no choice, Julian sneered, settling into a leather chair. He's an employee acting out of spite. We will ruin him financially if he doesn't comply today. Are you finished speculating, Mr. Croft? A cold voice interrupted. Victoria Sterling stepped out from the side lounge, accompanied by David Chun, the chief risk officer from the Central Exchange. Aunt Victoria? Chloe gasped, her brow furrowing in confusion. Mr. Chin, what are you doing at our internal legal mediation? We are here to review the catastrophic failure of Sterling Capital's risk management, Victoria stated sharply, taking her seat at the table, and to facilitate this mandatory meeting with the owner of the trading architecture. Where is Ethan? Julian demanded, glancing around with an arrogant frown. Tell him to bring his little lawyer brother in here so we can sign the account restoration papers. I stood up from the executive chair at the head of the table, stepping out from the shadows of the window frame. I wore a tailored dark navy suit, holding myself with calm, absolute authority. I am right here, Julian, I said softly, my voice cutting cleanly through the room. Chloe stared at me, her eyes widening in complete shock. Ethan? What? Why are you sitting in the chairman's chair? Why are you dressed like that? Sit down, Chloe, Victoria commanded, slamming her palm onto the polished wood. You are addressing the sole owner of the proprietary quantitative algorithms that kept this firm solvent. That's absurd, Julian shouted, jumping to his feet and pointing a shaking finger at me. He was just a salaried fund manager. His work belongs to Sterling Capital under corporate covenant. I never signed a corporate transfer agreement, Julian, I said, resting my hands flat on the mahogany table as I looked him dead in the eye. When Chloe and I restructured the firm 3 years ago, my brother Mac drafted my contract as an independent master licensing deal tied exclusively to my personal broker ID. That's a lie, Julian yelled, turning toward the lawyers. Tell them that's a lie. It is verified fact, Mr. Croft, David Chun interjected coldly, opening an official Central Exchange ledger. Ethan Vance personally holds the proprietary rights and client mandates. When he transferred his private institutional accounts to Vance Capital yesterday, he acted entirely within his legal rights. Transferred, Chloe stammered, her face draining of all color as she looked frantically between Victoria and David. Ethan, what did you do? Without Ethan's $400 million in core liquidity and high-frequency algorithms, Sterling Capital's operational value has dropped by 90% overnight, Victoria revealed, her voice devoid of mercy. The board has halted trading. The stock has crashed, and equity has been wiped out completely. 90%, Chloe shrieked, her voice cracking in pure terror. No, that's impossible. That wipes out my entire fortune. It gets worse, Mrs. Sterling, David Chin said, pulling a set of sealed federal documents from his briefcase. Our audit confirmed that Julian Croft submitted falsified collateral reports to the exchange last night, claiming Ethan's private algorithms as his own corporate backing to secure emergency credit lines. Julian took a sharp step back, his eyes darting frantically toward the door. That was just an administrative miscommunication. My legal team can explain. Save it for the judge, Mr. Croft. David Chin cut him off cleanly. Federal regulators have already issued an arrest warrant for major financial fraud. The boardroom doors swung open, and 2 uniformed police officers walked in. Before Julian could utter another word, they pulled his arms behind his back and snapped steel handcuffs around his wrists. Chloe, help me! Julian panicked, struggling as the officers turned him toward the door. Call the attorneys. Use the firm's legal defense fund. The firm has no funds left, Julian, Victoria said coldly, turning her back on him as security escorted him out into the hallway. The room fell into a heavy, suffocating silence. Chloe stood frozen in the center of the room, staring at me as if she were looking at a complete stranger. Tears began to spill over her eyelashes, smudging her eye makeup as her hands shook uncontrollably. The illusion of her rich, powerful ex had shattered, leaving her standing in the ruins of her own ambition. Ethan, Chloe whimpered, taking a slow, desperate step toward my side of the table. Ethan, please. I didn't know. Julian lied to me about everything. He tricked me. He didn't trick you, Chloe, I said quietly, looking at her with total detachment. You traded 6 years of my quiet loyalty for a shiny title and a liar's promise. Please, Ethan, she sobbed, sinking onto her knees beside the table. You can bring the accounts back. You can save us. I'm your wife. Not anymore, I answered softly, standing up and buttoning my suit jacket. The empire you tried to steal was never yours to trade. I walked past her weeping figure and walked out into the light. The sleek, polished glass doors of the new Vance Capital building reflected the clear morning light as I stepped out into the courtyard. Rain had washed the city clean overnight, leaving behind a crisp, fresh breeze. As I walked toward the entrance, a disheveled figure stepped out from behind the marble pillars, trembling. Ethan, Chloe cried, her voice cracking with desperation. She looked entirely broken. Her once impeccable designer coat was wrinkled and stained. Her dark hair was tangled, and dark circles shadowed her swollen eyes. She took 2 frantic steps toward me before stopping, clutching her worn leather handbag like a shield. You shouldn't be standing out here in the cold, Chloe, I said calmly, keeping my posture straight and my hands resting loosely in my tailored jacket pockets. Ethan, please, she sobbed, stepping closer as tears streamed down her pale cheeks. I've been standing outside your building since 5 in the morning. Security won't even let me enter the lobby. You have to talk to me. There is nothing left to discuss, I replied, my tone quiet, firm, and completely devoid of anger. The court filings were finalized yesterday afternoon. Sterling Capital has formally entered Chapter 7 liquidation. I have lost everything, Ethan, Chloe screamed softly, her voice shaking violently as she clasped her hands together in prayer. The bank froze my personal accounts. The board is suing me for gross negligence, and the press is destroying my name every single hour. I am completely bankrupt. You made your choices, Chloe, I reminded her softly. You stood in front of the entire board on our anniversary and traded my work for Julian's promises. Julian manipulated me, she cried out, taking another desperate step toward me. He lied about his capital. He fed my ambition and made me believe he could take us to the next level. I was stupid, Ethan. I was blinded by greed. But I never stopped loving you. Please, we can rebuild. We can fix this together. We were never a team, Chloe, I said, looking straight into her tear-filled eyes. You viewed our 6-year marriage as a corporate transaction. You mistook my quiet dedication for weakness and my loyalty for foolishness. I was wrong, she wept, dropping to her knees right on the cold stone pavement, reaching out to grasp the hem of my trousers. I was so terribly wrong. I don't care about the firm anymore. I don't care about the prestige or the board. I just want my husband back. Please, Ethan, don't leave me with nothing. I gently took a step back, stepping out of her reach with calm detachment. Reaching into my inner jacket pocket, I pulled out the small velvet box containing the silver luxury watch I had brought to the restaurant on our anniversary. What is that? Chloe whispered, her breath hitching as she stared at the box with wide, trembling eyes. This was my anniversary gift to you, I said softly, crouching down so I was eye level with her. I spent weeks searching for this watch because it symbolized 6 years of quiet, honest devotion. I wanted to celebrate the life we built together. Ethan, she whimpered, reaching out a shaking hand. I placed the silver watch gently into her palm and closed her cold fingers around it. Keep it, I said quietly. Sell it to pay your initial legal fees, or keep it as a reminder. Let it remind you that real loyalty cannot be bought, sold, or traded for corporate status. Ethan, please don't do this, she begged, her shoulders shaking hysterically as her head bowed toward the ground. Don't walk away from me. Goodbye, Chloe, I said softly. I stood up, turned my back on her sobbing, and walked steadily through the revolving glass doors of Vance Capital. I did not look back once. An hour later, the sun climbed high into the sky, casting a warm golden glow across the city skyline. I stood on the expansive glass balcony of my new penthouse suite, taking a deep, clean breath of the fresh morning air. The heavy glass door behind me slid open, and my mother, Eleanor, stepped out onto the balcony, wrapping a soft beige shawl around her shoulders. Beside her, my brother Mac walked out carrying 3 crystal glasses filled with sparkling cider, a bright, triumphant smile on his face. The Central Exchange just issued the official market update, Ethan, Mac announced proudly, handing me a glass. Vance Capital's inaugural fund was oversubscribed by $200 million within 20 minutes of opening. Every major institutional client has officially transferred their assets under your direct management. Honesty and real performance always win in the long run, son, Eleanor said gently, resting a warm, loving hand on my forearm. Your father always said that a man's true wealth lies in his integrity. He would be so proud to see you standing here today. I couldn't have done any of this without you too, I said, looking from my mother to Mac with deep, genuine gratitude. When Chloe handed my position to Julian, I almost believed my quiet work didn't matter. Your work was the entire foundation, Ethan, Mac said firmly, clinking his glass against mine. They just realized it too late. To Vance Capital. To Vance Capital, Eleanor echoed with a proud, radiant smile. To the future, I added, clinking my glass against theirs as I looked out over the thriving metropolis below. The betrayal, the heartbreak, and the humiliation were completely behind me. Standing high above the city, I finally possessed complete control of my life, ready to build an empire grounded in truth, dignity, and unshakable pride.